Hello, I'm Stephanie Ruff.
And I'm Aviva Nebeski.
We're the hosts of the Dressage Today podcast, where you can find us talking about anything and everything dressage related. Our conversations span the world of dressage, from leading riders to local level dressage heroes. We're talking training advice, showing tips, and sharing stories to inspire your own dressage journey. So tune in, then tack up. Welcome to the September edition of the Dressage Today podcast, sponsored by Purina. Later, we'll have a conversation with Michael Bragdell, the head trainer at Hilltop Farm. And it is September, and September on the East Coast can only mean one thing, and that's dressage at Devon. So Aviva, have you been to Devon? Do you have any special memories of it?
I have been to Devon. Unfortunately, Devon usually takes place during the Jewish High Holy Days, so it's been a little hit or miss with my getting there. But I have been, and it was really an experience. I went expecting something along the lines of, and I should know better, but I went thinking along the lines of something like the Kentucky Horse Park, that it was going to be this big, huge, enormous, whatever. And, it's this little place right in the middle of, the main line in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And, it was wow. I mean, it was just so close and intimate and personal. And it was funny because, as our listeners know, I didn't start riding until I was older. When I was in graduate school, I went to graduate school in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, which is a hop, skip, and a jump down Route 30 from Devon. And I remember when I was in graduate school, I was trying to get the lay of the land, and I drove down Route 30, and there was a horse show going on at Devon. And it was September, and it was dressage at Devon. And I had no idea what was going on, but there were horses, and it was Devon. And I mean, everybody's heard of Devon. So I pulled in and I parked and I watched some stuff, and I got very confused because nobody was jumping. And so I watched for a little while, and then I turned around and I went home and promptly forgot about it. And, decades later, or maybe probably only a decade later, I realized what dressage at Devon was, and that I had been there. So yes, I've been to Devon several times now. How about you? Have you been?
Well, in the, let's see, I lived in Maryland for 17 years, and I went to Devon once, which is, I know, kind of a shame. Yeah. I know. It was a 3.5 hour one-way drive for me. So it was just long enough to make it hard to go down and back in a day. Yeah. And for much of the time I had the farm, and being gone overnight was hard and blah, blah, blah. So I always had some reason not to go. But eventually I was like, before I have to get there at some point, because all my friends would always go. They would get a box. They had a box, and they would do the whole, wine and cheese on Saturday night, and they'd stay over and all that. And I was like, one of these days I have to go. Now, I still didn't stay overnight, but I did do the drive. I did the drive down there, and it was, fortunately, the weather wasn't horrible, but it was cold. But
it was surprising that it wasn't raining, because it always rains at Devon.
It always rains at Devon.
Yeah, and the couple times I went, that it rained at Devon, and honestly, one of my most vivid memories of Devon is watching Cesar Parra riding in the Dixon Oval. And it was not raining, but it had rained, and there were puddles everywhere. And he was riding across the diagonal, and he was doing his tempi changes. And at one point, he slid one leg forward, and the entire stirrup leather, whee!
Oh, no.
Flew off his saddle. And he finished his test with one stirrup, and the stirrup leather and iron sitting in the middle of the arena.
Nice.
In a puddle.
In a puddle. See, that's a very Devon thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the shopping is great.
Well, that's what I was going to say. My friends would go and they'd always come back hundreds of dollars poorer than when they left, yes, because they would always shop. And I did browse, and I was going, the one thing I did enjoy, because it was cold, was the Dewberry booth that they were giving out Baileys, little shots of Baileys. So I had to partake in that, and that was quite tasty.
Yes. And then you drove home.
And then, okay, it was like they were not letting people get inebriated.
Sure they weren't.
And it was plenty of time between that and when I went home. So, but yeah, no, the shopping is one of the things that Devon's known for, actually, is all the fabulous places that you can go and spend your money at. Yes. So it's an experience. So if you're on the East Coast and within a couple of hours, we encourage you to go just to see it, because it is different than other shows. It just
they tell me it's the closest thing to a European show that we have in the country, in terms of the intimacy and,
right,
all the rest of it. I've known a lot of people who have competed there, both at the breed show and in the performance part, and it just all sounds so intimidating. You drive through these little tight alleys with your trailer, and you offload everything, and then you have to park miles away, and it's a big deal, though. It was a dream of mine for a long time, not so much anymore.
Well, maybe it might still happen. Maybe.
Probably not.
Okay, well, all right. Yeah. But at any rate, this podcast will be available right before the start of Devon. So we want to, if anybody's there or if anybody's competing, good luck, and be ready for anything. Yeah, and have fun. Today's Ask the L question comes from Kathy. She says she has a tense horse that sometimes jigs during the walk portion of the test. And from a scoring standpoint, she wants to know, when you're riding the walk movements, what's better? A horse that you're trying to get a big walk and the horse ends up jigging, or you ride a conservative walk to keep the horse from not jigging?
I think it depends on a couple of things. She doesn't specify whether she's talking about the medium walk or the free walk, or whether the jig is coming during the transition. So I'm going to answer sort of all of that.
Okay.
So generally what I want to see in a medium walk is a horse that is marching actively. And I say, pretend you're in a parade and you're marching along to, the Washington Post march, that it's a very clear beat and your horse is moving forward with a sense of purpose. Now, I know that there are horses that if you push the walk, they will jig, or like my horse, they will become lateral. So in a situation like that, you have to remember that the purity of the walk is very, very important. Mm-hmm. So if you can get a clear walk that isn't necessarily particularly marching and impressive, but it is a clear 4-beat walk, I would recommend that that's what you do, because you're going to get a 6, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
The free walk is defined by overtrack. The horse is swinging through the back, is, completely unfettered, and, moving forward again with a sense of purpose. I see a lot of very lazy walks in the arena, where the horse basically goes on break.
Yeah.
And the free walk is not a break. Again, you can run into trouble if you start to push your horse too much, and you can end up with a jig. I think it depends on the venue. If it's a schooling show, I like to see a rider try at least once to demonstrate that they understand the purpose of the free walk is to walk forward freely, actively with overtrack.
Yeah.
And if the horse makes a mistake, that the rider is able to relax their body and relax their horse's body, and then maybe they get that lazy, dawdling walk. But they've at least demonstrated to me that they understand the purpose of the free walk, even though they're not able to get it at that time.
Right.
On the other hand, when I see these riders who basically make the turn across the diagonal, throw the reins away, and pick up their cell phones and start texting, that doesn't make me so happy. So I think that in a licensed competition, you're going to want to try to do the thing that is going to give you the highest score. So if your horse is going to walk, but maybe not with overtrack, but there's going to be a certain degree of swing and they're going to stay relaxed and they're going to allow you to pick up the reins, versus you try to push for a really big, sexy, swinging walk and your horse is in the jig, you're better off going for the conservative rather than going for big. But again, if it's a schooling show, the word is schooling.
Right.
I would say push the envelope a little bit and, take your hit. Depending on the judge, you'll either get a comment, jigs and 5, or, good effort and a 5.5 or a 6.
Yeah.
So the most jigging that I tend to see is when riders bring their horses back from the free walk to the medium walk.
Right.
And I think that's because most people don't practice that. And so, the horse knows I've been on a loose rein, because most people ride the free walk with flapping reins as opposed to maintaining connection, which is legal. Yeah. I prefer to see that you maintain connection. I prefer to see the free walk ridden the same way that you ride a stretchy circle, so that you maintain a soft connection and the horse actually reaches for the hand. And if you ride the free walk that way, then bringing the horse back from the free walk, if you practice that, you can be more subtle in bringing the horse back. Again, not knowing exactly what Kathy is asking, if you have a horse that tends to jig, when you come back from the free walk to the medium walk, my recommendation is don't bring them back real well. The chances are you're going to a trot after the medium walk. So, get your free walk, shorten your reins a tiny bit so that you show the judge that you know that there's a difference, and then go to ask for your trot and start shortening up your reins once you're actually in the trot, because it probably will end up being more fluid.
Right. If anyone has any questions they would like to have answered, please feel free to email us or reach out on our social media channels. And then when we return, we will have my conversation with Michael Bragdell. Your horse has unique feed needs, and Purina has you covered. From breeding and growing to senior horses, from performance horses to easy keepers, and everything in between, Purina has an extensive portfolio of research-backed options for your horse. There's no shortcut for quality nutrition. Cheaper isn't cheaper if it doesn't work. Put their research to the test. Find optimal nutrition at any level at your local Purina retailer, or visit purinamills.com to learn more. Originally from Sweden, Michael Bragdell started at Hilltop Farm in 1995, where he is currently the head trainer. Over the years, he has presented numerous stallions and hundreds of mares and foals at different breed registry inspections and breed shows. He is well known for his success with young horses and has twice won the USEF 4-year-old National Championship, as well as 3 USDF Dressage Final Championships on horses that he started. Michael is a USDF Bronze, Silver, and Gold Medalist and is a USDF Certified Instructor through 4th level. I just want to thank you, Michael, for joining us and talking with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And kind of the way we like to get started is, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in horses and then specifically dressage?
It really started with my father, who always loved horses, did not grow up with horses. He grew up sort of in the suburbs of Gothenburg, Sweden. Anyway, when he got older and he had children, he decided he wanted to take up riding and started taking riding lessons probably in his late 30s, early 40s. And one day he just asked me if I wanted to come along and maybe have a lesson. And I thought, sure, why not? That sounded like fun. And that's kind of how it started. I would go to the local riding club, have a lesson once a week, and then go home. And it wasn't like I was set on this is what I'm going to do, and I would spend hours in the barn or anything like that. It wasn't until my riding instructor took a liking to my riding and then suggested I come and work for her on the weekends, and then she offered me to lease her schoolmaster. That's really when it took off for me, where the interest really, I became a lot more interested in the riding and kind of went from there. Back then I was a jumper though. I just predominantly did jumping, very little dressage.
How did you get involved in the dressage part?
I did have some dressage lessons with my jumping horses in Sweden. It was mainly to get my horses a little more supple and bendable, and so I got we were able to have more rideable horses, which helped me the jump off to be quicker and
right.
all of that. The dressage really, when I had a bigger appreciation for it, wasn't really until I came to the U.S. I came here as a working student to Hilltop Farm. Scott and Suzanne Hester were here at Hilltop at the time. And I was here as a working student. And I thought, 1 year with dressage horses, I could handle that. And then plan was to go back to Sweden and continue on with my master's degree and studying and all of that. And one thing led to the next. I ended up taking a business degree here in the States and just got opportunities that developed over the years here at Hilltop. And I really got an appreciation for the dressage. I never really understood what it entailed in terms of the collections, and I don't think I really knew what piaffe dressage was when I came, honestly.
Right. So it turned out to be a really long year then that you.
Yeah, it's still going.
Yeah. That's interesting. I actually didn't realize that you came here to go to Hilltop, and you obviously have found your spot. Huh?
Yeah, it's when I first came, Hilltop had advertised in a Swedish magazine. There was a few staff here on the farm that were from Sweden, and so that was a connection.
Right.
I had worked abroad before. And so I didn't really know what to expect. All I knew was I thought it'd be exciting to come to the United States and get a chance to work with horses.
Sure.
And in this case, it was dressage horses, and I thought, well, that's okay. I can handle that.
So then, who have been your main dressage influences in your riding?
I think the two that I come to mind that have put a tremendous amount of influence in the way I want to train horses and develop my system of training horses is Morton Thompson for sure, and Devon McDonald. I think Morton has just given me plenty of insightful information over the years, and it's still, when I ride with him, it feels like his knowledge is there's no end to it. I feel like I learn something new every time I see him, every time I ride with him. And it doesn't matter what level it is, anything from the Greenbrook 3-year-old to my Grand Prix horse.
Right. Well, and Hilltop, and you have been well known for over the years for presenting horses at breed shows and breed inspections. And do you have any general tips that you could give to anyone who is interested in showing in hand?
Lately, I think I did a lot of showing in hand, and over the years here at Hilltop. When I first came, I had done some in Sweden on a very limited basis, and I didn't realize, it was a thing to the whole inspection part.
Right,
and,
right.
When I first came, I got directly involved with showing mares and foals at the inspection, and I didn't realize the magnitude of the inspections that they had here back in the late 90s. And still today we have big inspections, but not nearly the size that we used to have. But I feel as a gaining experience as a handler, the inspections learned me a lot, and it built the connection with the breeders. As a professional handler, I think that became very important.
Sure.
And became something that I did quite extensively. I did clinics in hand. I did go to breed shows a lot and handle for local breeders and people that have bred to our stallions and so forth. So, and I think that is something that is getting harder and harder for the breeders nowadays to find handlers that are willing to do that. I know we've been trying to host USDF clinics here to kind of boost the next generation of handlers, because I feel there is a lack of handlers out there. So we really would like to see more younger people take an interest to it, and I think there is opportunities to gain experience at the inspections and become a handler at the breed shows.
It definitely takes some athletic ability, that's for sure.
Yeah, it does. But it's also a little bit of a feel. I think you can be a very fast runner, but if you don't have a great feel for the horse,
right?
It still might not be a good presentation.
Right.
So it goes a little bit both ways. I think sometimes a good presentation doesn't have to be that you're running 100 miles an hour. And it can still look very impressive and be a very good presentation.
Right. Do you incorporate much in-hand work with your riding horses?
I do. I do quite a bit, actually. And I started very early on. I actually, as soon as the 3-year-olds are started on the saddle, which I don't do the starting part anymore. I have a very skillful assistant rider that does all the starting for me now, Brittany Stanley. But I do take over the horses once they are walk, trot, cantering, and I honestly don't do a whole lot of lunging. Really, what I do is the groundwork. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's really the being able to, on the ground, being able to control the feet, and then making them understand the basics of the contact, the basics of the connection. Even if I've had a rider on their back and they know how to walk, trot, canter, I still find it very helpful those early years of their education. I teach them the leg yield, I teach them the rein back, I teach them launches in, shoulder in. I can even do renvers and half pass from the ground, and I find it really helpful. It just makes it so much easier, I think, to be able to teach it from the ground. Yeah.
Do you feel like most of the horses, it translates pretty well from on the ground to then giving the aids under saddle?
It does. I think it makes it just so much easier. I feel they get it so much easier if I can get it from the ground. You're doing it in the walk, so it's a little bit of a slower pace, right? So it's it's a very basic level when I, for example, take the 3-year-old and I'm doing walk halt or walk to leg yields. For me, it's very important that they kind of figure out their own balance, that they're not balancing on the rein. Mm-hmm. And if I can get that on the ground, the riding becomes so much easier. They don't search for the reins to balance on.
Right. They already kind of have an idea of their own balance. So the U.S. Dressage Festival of Champions just finished up a couple of weeks ago, and you had several horses out there, but you had a couple of challenges with them. So I kind of have a 2-part question. First of all, how do you handle when something's not going quite right in the test? How do you handle it and keep persevering? That's part one.
Oh, that's part one. Well, I'm sure every trainer will say, you forget what just happened and you just move on.
Right.
Right. You got to just keep on going because you're probably, sometimes you probably have still the rest of the test to go, right? Or half the test to go.
Right. So if it happens on your opening center line, there's a lot left.
So you got to just forget what happened and just keep going. I think that's you can't dwell in the past. What happened, and you guys just move on. And it's hard. It's easy to say that when you're not in the moment.
Right.
But I think try to train yourself to say, okay, just I gotta move on to I gotta get ready for the next movement. And forget whatever mistake you had. It's you got to forget about it and just move on.
And then, so when you have a mistake in the test, or you're struggling with a movement, no matter what it is, it could be whatever a rider's struggling with. What do you then take back, and how do you work on that in your everyday training?
I think when it's more educated, or if it's a FEI horse, I'm sure most of the time, we made it there. So we probably know the movement. It's what caused us to have a mistake. Is it me as a rider? Did I get tense? Did I get unbalanced myself? Or I have too much in the way? Or was my horse not through enough? Or, whatever it might be at that level. And I think sometimes it could be you have a coach to maybe go over the test with, you can do that. If you video the test, maybe you can watch and say, oh, you know what? I see now. I kept my horse bent right the whole test. No wonder I couldn't do pirouette or, whatever it might be, right? Yeah. With the young horses, I had a Grand Prix horse there, and I had a young horse as well. And the young horse did super well the first day, and the second day something spooked him, and then it sort of unraveled, and I thought he would come back, and he sort of did, and then something else got him going, and at that point I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to try to get him to relax. At this point in my ride, it is what it is. So I'm just going to try to finish with him still feeling confident so he can go back in the ring the next day. Not that he had to show again.
Right.
And I think sometimes that can be tough, but to be able to think that way But we also have to remember, that was a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
They're young horses. They have moments, right?
They have moments.
And you just have to, I'm not going to dwell about it.
Right.
Now, if it's something that happens every time I go in the ring, I say, okay, maybe I need to really take a step back and I need to re-look at maybe I'm missing something in the training. But if it's something that, for me, like really a legit spook or scare, it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to hang my head over it. I'm just going to move on and keep on going.
Yeah. Well, and keep on going is I guess what you're going to do as Dressage at Devon is about to start.
Yeah.
And last year you won both the FEI World Cup Grand Prix and Grand Prix Freestyle with Credit Hilltop. And so what to you makes Devon a special place, or riding, the Saturday night freestyle under the lights?
There is no place like that than Devon. As we talked about earlier, I've been here since I was a toddler.
Right.
and been going to Devon all these years, mostly for the breed show. But I've gone for the jumper shows too in the spring, and always went to the Grand Prix Freestyle and Saturday evening, and I don't know, it's just it's a one-of-a-kind atmosphere, and I've really not seen any other place like that here in the States that have that feeling. It has a lot of history. I don't know, it's just the feeling, and it can be, the thing is, I've been at Devon. I'm sure there are lots of people that can remember Devons where it is freezing cold and pouring down rain.
Yes.
And we question our sanity of being out there, right? But it's still something to talk about, and it's still something special to be there and to stand in the middle of that arena and have the spotlights on you. I don't know. It's an amazing feeling.
Do you have any particular favorite moments or favorite memories, or just kind of the overall general? There are lots of memories over the years. There's been many horses I've taken through the Grand Championships in hand, and that's always been a special moment. Whether I'm the handler or whoever's in our team that's handling. Right. There's just so I remember when we had it was Chiquita. It was a foal that we presented for the foal championship, and she just had like one of those. It almost seemed like a magical moment. Like I think I was handling the mare, and a friend of mine from Sweden Andreas Forslund was handling the foal, and she just wouldn't miss a stride. They were just sort of clocked in every step of the way. Yeah. It was, one of those perfect presentations. I felt, that was an amazing feeling. Last year, winning with Credit at Devon, that's also just amazing. I look back at it that night, this something that I never could imagine myself to have done. Yeah.
Not in my dreams could I believe that could happen. And I was so excited for myself, for Credit, Jane. Jane has so much history with Devon. So,
right.
That for me was very exciting that we could do that for her. Excuse me, for her.
And so I guess you will be going again this year?
We are, yeah.
Are you doing the breed show and under saddle both?
We're doing both. We are bringing a few breed show horses again this year, and then we're staying for the performance over the weekend. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know what's the long-term forecast looking like.
I haven't dared to look at it. You just don't say anything. You bring everything for any possible forecast.
And maybe that's part of the charm, because you really don't know. Because it could be perfect, beautiful fall weather, like you said. It could pour buckets like a hurricane. It could just. It's just one never knows.
Exactly. Just come prepared. That's all I can say.
Prepared for every possible scenario. And so, even though the horse world obviously keeps you very, very busy, are there things that you enjoy doing outside of the horse world?
There are. I don't so much anymore because I have 2 little children that take up a lot of time at home. And after working at the barn, I have to go home and be papa for the rest of the day, and which I love it. I do love it. It's I'm sure anybody who has little children knows that it's you have great days and you have more challenging days, but I do love it. But besides that, I do run a lot. I've always been a runner. I used to do track and field in high school and middle school, and I've ran quite a few marathons and half marathons. Wow. I love the running part. Well,
that's then you're absolutely a natural then for all the in-hand showing that you do.
I know, right?
And so the last question I have for you is something that I like to ask everyone just to get their perspective. And it is, what do you feel makes a great horse person?
That's a good question, isn't it? I think it's, you're whether it's your own horse or it's a client horse, I always view it as my own, and trying to build a connection with that horse. And I do deal with young horses a lot, whether it's getting them presented at inspection or presented at the breed show. And I love the process of bringing them up from the basic walk talk canter to hopefully a Grand Prix horse.
Right.
But with that comes, I think, a lot of patience, and I think the patience part is very key when you're training the horses, and being able to read horses and connect with them. I think that makes a really good horse person successful. And I think along the way, I for sure have made lots of mistakes, and I'm probably going to do a lot more mistakes. But I think it's not being afraid to make mistakes is important.
Right.
I think that can limit us a little bit of taking that leap of faith sometimes, because we are a little bit afraid to make a mistake. And like I said, I'll probably do plenty of more mistakes down the road. But that's how it goes, and that's how we learn, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting you say that. You are now the second person who has talked about not being afraid to make a mistake and to learn from that, and to hopefully not make that mistake again, or not in that context or whatever, or make less of it. And I think that's something that dressage people being the detail perfectionist people that many dressage people are, it's hard to be accepting of mistakes sometimes.
I know. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we want to be perfect.
Right.
We want to be able to make it a 10 every time. And,
right.
But in that journey to make that 10, you're going to have a lot of force from tubes, and maybe a 1.
Right.
Hopefully more on the scores higher than that. But it is part of the journey, and hopefully you can reflect on those mistakes that you have and figure out, okay, well, what do I need to do to not do that again or improve that? How do I improve that?
Right. Yes. Well, I wish you a week of no mistakes at Devon. And
we'll do our best.
And I thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we can do this again. I hope everybody gets, shows up at Devon well prepared for good time and any type of weather that the skies will throw at us.
That's right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Dressage Today podcast. If you've missed any episodes or to subscribe, go to Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Learn more and read in-depth training articles at dressagetoday.com, or you can visit our subscription video site, ondemand.dressagetoday.com. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Happy riding, and we'll see you at X. The Dressage Today podcast is a production of the Equine Podcast Network, an entity of Equine Network, LLC.